Lawrence Neal here. Welcome back to highintensitybusiness.com. This is episode 298. Today's guest is Mike Polano. Mike is Chief Experience Officer at Arx. Arx provides state-of-the-art adaptive resistance exercise technology. Mike, welcome back to the podcast.
Man, good to be here, Lawrence. It's been too long.
Way too long. I think the last time I can't even remember last time we spoke, but last time I saw you was Rec 2019, wasn't it?
And that was like a heck of a time between all of us. Yeah, turned out to be a great show, and bummed that it's virtual this year, but we'll be back to it next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were kind of discussing before we came on the podcast, and we were talking about what we wanted to touch on, and I was just really fascinated in getting a kind of update from you in terms of Arx, what you guys have been working on, your plans for the future, how you kind of have responded, and how things have been during 2020, which sounds very positive. So I'm fascinated to hear about that. And then we can kind of get into what your views are about what's happened, the events this year happened, how it's kind of impacted the kind of exercise industry, and what you think the opportunities are right now as well. So give us an update. What's happening with Arx?
Yeah. I think the last time, well, first I got to apologize to everybody who's listening and is a long-term listener for hearing my voice in the ad for however long we've been running that ad for at this time. My sincerest apologies. It always hurts when I have to hear myself. So I can only imagine how bad it is for other people. But we'll probably get some refreshed ads coming in 2021, I'm sure. But 2020 has been great. Well, thank you. 2020 for us as a company is our best year ever. And it's really exciting to sit here as we approach the end of it and say that. Now, were we confident when everything kind of happened in March? No, had no idea, honestly, to be clear. But like any business during this time, whether you believe this is the lockdown should happen, or 50% capacity makes any sense, it's like you can't control that. That's just a part of the world we live in right now. And so the way our team has kind of taken it is, what are the rules that we now have to play with? How do we work with those and make them work to our advantage? Excuse me. That's been really interesting for us to see, like, how 75% of our businesses were startups for the last few years. So if you're going to start a business now that's in the health space, call it a gym, call it a studio, call it a biohacking center, whatever you want to call it. Depending on what city you live in, I mean, you might be dead in the water before you start, just because those businesses have been shut down. So what we've seen is, a couple of people have taken them in their house to get started, knowing that, there is an inevitable point at which they can open. So financially they can make it work. They said, you know what, I got to wait it out 3 to 6 months or whatever, but I want to get this machine in my home. So I can start training on it, start getting familiar with it, start to honestly build a story that they can then tell their future clients, their future customers about, like, hey, I was working out on this thing for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and here are my results. That goes a really long way when you're trying to sell somebody at the sales table, or, through the demo process. Because I was just listening to to John Zarbach, one of our customers in St. Louis, talk about, like, how his process is like that the machines sell themselves. And that's really what we see over the years is you get somebody on the machine, you don't have to convince them that it's a real thing. It's just right away, though, they're going to be like, well, okay, cool, I understand the general idea of all this stuff, but, like, has it worked for you? Who has it worked for? Like, show me some kind of testimonial that I can relate to that's not something from, Arx corporate. And that's really where a couple of our customers have just taken the machines earlier than they were actually going to start their business to get rolling. So that's one thing that's happened.
Can't you just like pull testimonials from all the different studios and have them share sort of cross share testimonials? Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is actually something I'm upset with myself that I haven't been reaching out more to our customer base, because I mean, that's happening literally probably start of next week. I just got back from a vacation. But that the more we see the growth of our company, the more we realize, like, you know, we have averaged 10,000 people that use Arx a month. So there's got to be some good results out there, right? And yeah, no, we don't even hope. We know that they're out there. It's honestly just going through the process of making sure that that customer wants their information shared, but also just defining kind of which ones we want to look for. But yeah, if you go to John in St. Louis, or you go to Julian, who was on the podcast a couple episodes ago in Zurich, there's people out there getting insane results, right? And it's almost become, I would assume it's just like it has been for us. It just becomes such a way of life that you're just like, yeah, of course you got, 60% stronger, or of course you added 5 pounds of lean muscle mass, or of course you don't have osteoporosis anymore, right? It's not news to us at all, but like, I understand fully that we're still very unknown, and we need to continue to drive that message home. So that's something that's on my initiative in the very short term to provide, prospects and everybody looking at ARX, because it's truly magic that's happening out there. We just need to tell people about it.
Yeah, cool. And so you've had a successful year, and you've got a new website in place. Looks really stylish. I love how clear it is. It looks like it's going to provide a much better user experience and easy for people to navigate and find what they want as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking a little bit about that as well. Just as we market, small team, there's only 9 of us. And with that, as we've grown this year, we're looking at taking on a Series A. We're looking on, bringing on more people on the team, like that kind of thing. But
Series A, that's venture capital, right?
Yeah, technically. It doesn't have to be from a venture firm, but it could be for, various places. So anybody out there who's listening, who is interested in angel or otherwise, we are looking on taking on money this year, which is it's super exciting. Like, to be in that place and know that we've done it literally the hardest way you could possibly do it for 6+ years of just kind of not mom and pop. It's more like just friends and family money on the initial, and then as we made money, we used that money, but we've kept it real lean over the years. And in order to do that, it's just taking the hard route. So now we're looking to pour some gas on this fire, because we know the product works, we know it's successful, but then you got to add bandwidth in terms of the team, bandwidth in terms of manufacturing capabilities. We're going to do over 100 machines this year, so that's just something as a business you scale, and you ultimately need capital for. A lot of people say, money doesn't solve everything. And I'm like, in our case, I really do think money really solves almost everything. And when it comes to scale, the product itself right now is amazing, but it can always get better. And we're excited about bringing that to the world in 2021. So a lot of fun stuff cooking on that side. But yeah, to your original question of just the website, the basics. Yeah, we're trying to give people the information that they require on the front end, trying to nurture our prospect more. Like every good marketing book will tell you, do these fundamentals. And, we took a hard look and we said, we're not really providing those fundamentals currently to our prospects, and we need to. It's such a strong mission that we have. Our goal is to democratize exercise to the world. And in order to do that, you got to tell the correct sales story. You got to tell the right, you got to nurture that person through the process. So that's kind of where I've shifted my role just very recently, since we hired an operations manager in-house to take over about 75% of what I was doing beforehand.
Cool. And as I was saying to you, I get a lot of searches from search engines searching for how much is Arx, which is interesting. And we've definitely covered pricing and costs on previous episodes. And in fact, I think I've challenged both you and Jim on it before, because I know we had concerns from potential prospects about it being, Arx being too expensive and this kind of thing, and you guys addressed that. So I can't remember actually if you both addressed that primarily in a membership Q&A, and or you did it on the public podcast. But if you go back through the podcast we've done, certainly the one with Abe, perhaps,
Sure.
which will be linked to from this one. So if you just, so it will be linked to from the blog post for this one, 298. Then you can hear about that. But you were telling me before the call that you've got a new page that's far more easy to understand in terms of the pricing and the different kind of financing that's available and things like that. Do you want to just elaborate on that, just because I know that people want to understand that a bit better?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, originally we didn't, just the behind the curtain into the company, I mean, we didn't offer the pricing publicly because it was a new product and it ultimately required some context to it. That's still the case in a lot of ways. But at some point in time, we made a decision internally that we said, we haven't posted, but we get a lot of these questions. And ultimately, if it's too expensive, then it's too expensive for some people. But that's fine. That's just kind of where the product is currently. It won't always be this expensive, but there will be plenty of people who see the number and be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to talk to somebody. Let's go for it. So if you do go to our webpage right now, arxfit.com, you go to the Buy ARX button in the top, and then you choose whether you're a startup business, an existing business, or a home user. You'll find pricing for each one of those laid out. But it's, everything's there now. We were never hiding. We were never like ashamed of of the number or anything like that. It was purely from a sales perspective that, some people get sticker shock. And to us, that number is, with the appropriate context, it makes a lot of sense, right? And 120 businesses later, after the last 4 years that have opened using ARX, we've seen it work. But you need context to understand how it works. Otherwise, everybody immediately is just like, well, I could go get a Nautilus, whatever machine for $5,000 and start a business. It's like, that is true, but it's not the same type of business. It's not the same type of business that could require the same amount of membership fee or, price per workout. So there's a lot of stuff that ultimately ARX offers on the business side that makes those numbers super palatable. And ultimately, we've seen people like Abe in San Francisco. I mean, they were profitable month one because they had done some pre-selling and they got some people in and they charged a premium because they understood what they had. And that's just kind of why we've always walked people through the sales process in order to reframe it so that it makes sense for them.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, and that's a great episode. I recommend the listeners listen to. It's called, I think it's, the title's How to Build a Profitable ARX Business, and we'll link to it from the show notes for this one. No, I completely agree. And it's all about the context and the nuance of that context. You were talking earlier about how weird this year has been and how businesses have had to kind of pivot and respond. What
Sure.
kind of pivots have you had to make at ARX to respond to the situation?
Yeah, I mean, originally we were doing all of our, so just to back up to anybody who's not familiar kind of with what the what the setup is over here. So we manufacture everything in Austin, Texas. We this year have moved into a facility that does all of the assembly of our machines and the quality control. We were doing that, but we were doing that over at our manufacturer. And so we outgrew them. And so then at some point we said, we need to take this all in-house so we can manage this process better, make sure we're making a better product, and ultimately serve our customer better. So that was July of last year. And we moved in this big warehouse and didn't own anything to put in it. And so now we've shifted over to, we have a fully functional, multiple work bays and an inventory management system. We're ordering piece parts from our manufacturer instead of full machines. And that's a significant undertaking for us, but one that we knew needed to happen as we were growing, but ultimately helps us provide and deliver a better machine out the door every day. So how has that changed for us? Well, some materials don't come from the United States. So we have a motor system, so that motor is not made in America. And so ultimately that was like an interesting process to see how long it was going to take and customs and all that kind of stuff. So we've just had to kind of shift and adjust some of our ordering practices and ultimately some of our lead times with our customers when things were tumultuous in the beginning. The other thing is we used to do all of our installs live in person. So I was out there doing about half of them. Jim Keene, who's been on a podcast as well on our team, who is now the director of education and training. And so we were out there on a regular basis, doing these installs and overseeing the process. What we were forced to do was, luckily our moving company still was able to deliver the machines. That was no big deal. But we had to alter our process internally to say, like, how do we still provide the best onboarding and training? It's an expensive product. We want to make sure that people feel the love on install day and training day so that, they get off and running just the same as they would if Mike was there personally. And that was difficult at first. Like we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do that. But thank God for Zoom and video calls and all the other thins that we do. We have a full training academy that we put everybody through. So at least day one, they have like an understanding. And then we check in with them. So we're checking in with everybody, that same week to see if everything's good with the machine. We check in with them a month later, check in with them 3 months later. We want these people to be successful, and we understand that this is new technology. It is very easy to use once you get rolling with it. But we want to make sure that's the case for everybody. So that process shift for us was pretty big, and it's been super successful, and everybody's still getting off and running just the same as they were when we were flying out.
Just in terms of the pivot, talking about the change in demand is interesting, because I remember that article came out, I think it was the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal about ARX. I think they were showcasing Quantify Fitness and how just efficiently workout is, which is obviously a great piece of advertising on the face of it for ARX, right? And for some of these facilities. And I remember that came out, and I think I messaged you guys. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I think this is going to result in, probably a lot of sales. And then COVID happened, literally like straight after that.
Literally like the week after. They shut down everything. Such is life in business.
Yeah, that's it. You just have to adapt, don't you? But I was curious, because I think I said to you, like, I'm so sorry that this has happened. You must be seeing a poor response from obviously the studio community. But you actually said to me that you had got a really good response from the home user community. Can you talk to me about how the demand has changed and how that's changed over the course of 2020?
Yeah, for sure.
Cohorts of customers. That would be interesting.
May 2020 was the best month we'd ever had in the company. So 2 months after everything shuts down, you're thinking, well, where's our business going to go, right? Like, how is this going to affect us? When you have a primary avatar of a startup who is probably not that excited to open up doors when, they're literally forcing people to close their doors. So there was that. And the home user side of things picked up a lot, and it was a lot because of that Wall Street Journal article. And for anybody who's not familiar with that, they wrote an article about our customer Josh Jarrett in Quantified Fitness in Nashville, basically just identifying, like, I think the title was gyms that want you to leave as soon as possible. Because everything's so efficient and everything's so quick, and that's the whole purpose of what we do, is we sell time, really, at the end of the day. And it was great because that's the type of reader that ultimately values their time. And as a lot of these corporate executives and parents and all this stuff started to work from home, with no end in sight for that, I think some of the tech companies right away said, you don't need to come in the office for the rest of the year. And now they've pushed that all the way till basically like the summer of next year. So I have a couple of friends that work at Facebook. And once that starts to become the reality that we're now dealing with, the value proposition, if you want to call it that, for owning Arx machine in your house it makes a lot more sense. Because that you're not going to have a business down the street that's going to be open to do it, which may or may not be true depending on where you are and what your setup is. We'll talk about the different ways that the model can work even in a shutdown scenario. But yeah, so that we were grateful that at that time, some home users came through, and those people are having tremendous success because they quickly get their 8-minute workout, 12-minute workout, whatever they're doing once a week, and they go on their life. They're doing Zoom calls and they're running their business from a remote desktop, or they're just being a dad or a mom more to their kids because their kids are at school or not at school, and they're doing all sorts of mayhem on Zoom and tablets and stuff like that, which requires a different level of parenting and a different amount of accountability and time. That's what I'm seeing amongst the parents that I know are at home with their kids is like they don't have the opportunity to just run out. A lot of people used to travel for work. They did the workout beforehand and then they showed up at the office, or vice versa. They finished the job, they go to the workout for an hour and a half, and then they drive home and they show up for dinner. You can't escape home anymore. Like, you're just there all the time. And so how efficient can you be with that workout and still get the things that you need as a human, so that you can show up best as exec, a parent, whoever.
Mike, I gotta say though, I know that it makes me laugh because I know that some people are thinking, well, you could save a lot of money if you just did a wall sit, push-ups to failure, and chins to failure.
Sure. Sure. And we never will tell anybody otherwise. That's a valuable form of exercise. But if you're looking for the absolute best and you're looking to still improve and still get, approach that genetic ceiling that we're all gunning for, if you're that type of person who doesn't want to stop personally, then it makes a lot of sense. And ultimately too, there's just a lot of people who don't trust the big box gym or, the gym in your office building. That's just not an option. Sometimes it's not even open. So yeah, that's kind of the mental shift in the framework that I think a lot of people are dealing with right now. And, how you choose to go forward so you still get the thing that we know we need, quote unquote, exercise, right? That's your call. So we're, for certain people it makes sense, for other people it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So you hinted at, how the Arx can be used in the business sense. You said, how does it work in a shutdown scenario? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So first thing to know about our machines as of 2017 was, we understood that we were thinking that the market was already going to turn the way that it's turned to a more autonomous kind of setup. In fact, we wanted to not only make sure that happened, but we were driving that with our design and how we organized the machines. And in 2017, we created self-driving mode. So originally you used to have to push the buttons in early Arx days. Now you work out by yourself. Flash forward 3 years, we have innovated severely on that. And it's really fun to see what we've created and what we can still create. But all that means to anybody who's listening right now is that if you're opening a business today with some Arx machines, it's never been easier to get started on the machine. We have tool tips that walk you through the whole process of setting up ranges of motion. We have videos that explain how to do a leg press, how to do a chest press. All of this stuff has been on our minds because this is where we want the industry to go. We want to truly democratize exercise and have an Arx Alpha in London Heathrow and in JFK and all the major airports, so that when people are bouncing around, they just show up and get to use this machine, and it's a very cohesive system. These are the steps that we've taken in the last year to get us closer to that reality. We're not quite there yet, but we are definitely way further along than we've ever been. And so I say all this to point out that I was just in Denver and we were meeting with an investment group out there at one of our customers, Ryan Bressel, Golden Biohack, if anyone's interested out in that area. And he's got all the toys. He's got your complete biohacking lab. But as part of this, I said, Ryan, what have you been doing in terms of shutdowns and kind of dealing with your members and stuff like that? He said, well, at first it was a very one-on-one experience, right? I used to walk everybody through. He and his wife kind of run the facility. I used to have to walk everybody through the workout, and some people like that. Other people, take it or leave it. They're easily able to do it by themselves. When Colorado ultimately went through their version of restrictions and limitations, Ryan just said, you know what, I'm going to give everybody 24/7 key card access. He's got security and all the cameras necessary. And then he's going to train everybody to run their own workouts, to use all the technology actually that's in his facility, except for cryo. I think that's the only one that he didn't feel confident about.
Be careful with that one.
Yeah. It's probably just from a risk mitigation perspective, not the one that you want to have everyone just be firing off on a regular basis. But everything else was, free for anybody to use when they chose. Say that again?
What else does he have?
He's got a Vasper system. He's got a Wavi, which is like a cool EEG machine. He's got the Pulse Center's PEMF. He's got the Carol bike. He's got the red light bed. He's really invested a lot in what he's created. But what's awesome to see, and we have most of the stuff too at our headquarters, is they're mature products now. 3, 4, 5 years later or previous, these products were very rough and they weren't necessarily commercial grade or commercial ready. They were researched and the understanding behind them was like, yeah, this thing totally works, but can it work in an airport by itself, sitting up and you just walk up and can it guide you? Two very different product trajectories that you need to be thinking about. So for us, we always knew that this is where we wanted to go. When the pandemic hit, it forced the hand of a lot of people to start thinking about, well, I can't be standing over my trainee, coaching form, right? I have to do that from a distance, or I might not even be able to be in the room in certain cases. And that's where, from the software perspective, we have a fully autonomous system. It remembers your ranges of motion every time. All of the speeds are controlled for positively and negatively. Rest times are controlled. It's a one button kind of thing to just repeat a workout. So we've simplified that process of using the machine to a level where, once you guide somebody once or twice through, and then you let them kind of run their own workout, that's the model that we want to see more people dive into, where they remove themselves as the sauce, the magic sauce, the special, I know all the keywords and the queuing and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff already happens in the software. And you can go to our website and look at some of that stuff. There's a great video of Doug McGuff just getting absolutely destroyed doing a leg press or doing a big 5 at our old office. And you'll see all the numbers on the screen and it'll make a lot of sense. Jim's coaching them and cueing them, but once you understand what to look at, you become your own motivator. And that's a really important shift that's happening when you use Arx Machines.
Yeah, this is fascinating. And I know we spoke before about a couple of studio owners who are already experimenting with this. I mean, Owen from Live Oak is providing some, I believe, unsupervised ARX services. You mentioned Upgrade Labs. Maybe there's some others. I'm just curious, have you got anyone who really, really understands this opportunity? And not that you have to reveal, because I understand, client confidentiality and all of that stuff. But just curious if you've had interest from people who could see the opportunity to scale lots of different mini locations with this autonomous business experience, with this service experience where people go in self-trained, there's no trainer, so it keeps overhead low. And obviously you can just scale that up. So have you had that kind of interest?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've been talking about this exact thing, but in totally different cultural context, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about this in 2016, 2017, when we created this new self-driving system. We said, now it's possible. Now you don't need to be overseeing every little step that happens typically in a high intensity training facility. They can't move the machine or the weight stack faster, right? It's not possible. So we start removing some of these variables that humans used to have to control for. And we were like, great, well, now you could just remove the trainer, or at least remove a portion of what the trainer does, We still feel like there's value to have somebody there. We still feel like there's value to have somebody explain and onboard somebody so that they correctly are using this machine at the level that we wanted to do
what
it.
about motivation, right? Because I get everything. I get what you
Right.
mean about the turnarounds, the speed of movement, but what about motivation? Like having someone there to really push you on. I mean, can the machine do that, or is that kind of AI that's coming?
So if you can imagine, if you've seen an Arx machine or you've seen the software, you kind of understand this peaks and valleys graph thing that happens as you're using it. It's basically showing your momentary force output at every given second on the positive and the negative. The thing we added, I don't even remember at this point, over a year ago at least, was these horizontal lines that show you, okay, well, here's exactly what you did on your last rep. So it's a black line for the positive and it's a red line for the negative. And these are the peaks that you have to, it's basically when I coach people, I say, get me above the black line as you're pushing out, and then get me above the red line as you're pushing back. Now, I'll take somebody off the street, never tried Arx before, probably hasn't even done resistance training at a high level before. And what I can do is after we have some baseline numbers, I can get them to work at a very, very high intensity with few words. There's no yelling. There's no, coaching up throughout the process. It's here's the line that you need to look at the screen, get me above this line. Okay, look at the screen again, get me above this other line. It's the same repetitive game that we play with ourselves. And what's interesting to watch happen when people are thrust into this system is they are the ones that are holding themselves accountable for how much effort they're putting into the workout. You can cheat. And I've heard Owen talk to me about a lot of this. Like there's a lot of people who make a face like they're working hard, but are not physically working that hard. There's a lot of people who breathe heavy, but aren't actually pushing heavy. There's a way to kind of game the system. And as a good trainer, you see through that. But there's a lot of opportunity for, call it gaps in your intensity. With Arx, you can't hide. And you also can't blame anybody for, hey, you didn't put enough weight on the stack, or you put too little weight on the stack, and it's too easy. There's all sorts of different ways that system just falls apart. And we deal with it because it's just the system that we were given at the time. But with Arx, none of our trainers none of our customers are looking at the screen and being gimmicked or like having the wool pull over their eyes about how much effort is getting put forth. And neither is the user. And that's the key thing. It's like the user now sees on the screen, well, I just did 300. I can do that. And then they go and do it. And then sometimes it'll just be like, hey, give me 330. And I'll give them a physical number to look at. It's like, keep pushing until this number shows 330. And sure enough, 9 times out of 10, when they are able to connect that physical number, that quantified number to their physical body, they achieve that level of intensity. Our bodies don't like the idea of like pushing ourselves to that max. It's not something that is inherently like easy to do. And I find that that's where Arx really shines, is it enables people to get to that level of intensity, sometimes on the first set. And all of a sudden they're just going to depths of intensity that they never would have done because they never would have chosen that amount of resistance on the stack. Yeah. And now they're in this free, safe environment that controls all your ranges of motion. And the only thing I need to do is look at the screen and get it above the red line. Yeah, I'm in. And then they change. Then they get focused. And now they're playing a different game.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's no stack, so they don't get intimidated by it either. Because I've had clients who, I set them at, one level on like the leg press, let's say, and they overshoot for reps. So I put it up quite significantly higher. And this client who's quite new actually ended up performing a lot worse because he lacked the confidence in his own ability, and it kind of frightened him, made him nervous. And I even cued it poorly. I said, you're getting real strong now. So we're going to really pick the weight up. And it was the worst thing to say. Right. And I realized that, and you don't have that issue with Arx, do you? So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're signing a contract with that gravitational weight when you say we're going to do 400 today. That's what it is. It's 400 up, it's 400 down. And who knows physically where the trainee really is, right? Like they might feel great, and then the moment you say that, they might literally lose strength and become weaker because they mentally just don't think they can accomplish 400 pounds. Mm-hmm. With ARX, we don't hold anybody to any standard except the previous workout they did or their personal best on the screen. But if you don't achieve those numbers, like nothing bad happens. You still get a great workout. You still get whatever your body is capable of. And that might be, 5% down today. It's like, okay, but we know you're 5% down. It's not 20% down. And that means today was just maybe not a great day. But the reverse happens more often, where somebody sees what they did previously and they know that their body was there and that they were capable of doing that, and that they're able to work at that level again safely, and that they're not going to encounter any sort of resistance that is going to be too much for them. When you have that freedom, that mental freedom to sit down on the machine and say, I got this. And if I don't, nothing bad is going to happen to me. That's an empowering shift that users have that allows you then to go reach for that, PR, to go reach for that level of intensity that you otherwise may have thought like, it was a rough weekend. I don't know if I have it today. I can't tell you how many times personally, as well as with other people that we train, that people come in and are like, oh, I'm going to do terrible today. And then they blow it out by like 6%. And you're like, yeah.
You have that happen in gravity-based machines too, actually.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure it does. But it's just so interesting to watch the disconnection that we often has as humans with where we're really at. And I love the ARX being this no frills quantified mirror that shows you in the moment. It's like, hey, you're good. Like, let's go. Don't give me any of this sob story about how you didn't sleep last night. Your body is still ready to push and give these levels of intensity. And then the vice versa happens too. Sometimes people come in and they think they're great, and they're all hyped up and I'm gonna crush it today, and they're down 20%, and you're like, oh, you're not even close. You didn't even come close to recovery. That's the strangest
phenomenon when that happens, right?
And that just shows you like hormones and kind of psychology of it all. But at the end of the day, if your muscle fibers are not recovered, ARX will show you explicitly and sometimes almost immediately by how much. And you say, oh, I know right away some days, first rep of a leg press or something, let's say, I'm like, oh, this is like, call it quits today. Like there's no chance I'm recovered, because you just don't have the motor recruitment capabilities to create that force that you created 7 days ago, 4 days ago, whatever.
So let's talk about this for a second. Sorry, my lights keep going out in my office, if you're wondering why.
Yeah, I see that. It's fancy. Yeah. You got the motion sensor.
They will, well, it's fancy, but it doesn't even work properly.
Yeah, fancy.
So I want to talk about this because this is fascinating to me. This opportunity to have an autonomous self-serve ARX studio. It's like, think about, how many sessions could you do in an hour? What's the session length? 6 minutes, 10 minutes? 10 minutes, maybe, if you're being conservative, right? You could literally provide, again, I guess we're just keeping it simple, like a standalone ARX unit, right? Facility, like a micro studio. And I should credit, I think, Dr. Bryce Lee, good friend of mine, previous podcast guest, who actually talked about this as an idea. I think before even you guys, I heard it from you guys. So credit him. And he's probably annoyed about me talking about it, everyone, and taking the credit. And so I'm thinking, you have one of those set up in a mini studio. You can do so much volume because the sessions are so short, because the workout's so efficient. Obviously, if you had more tech in there, then maybe you'd have more time. I don't know. That's an incredible business model. All right. In terms of the amount of revenue you could generate in a small footprint. In my mind, why aren't you guys, maybe you are, being absolutely inundated with inquiries from investors and entrepreneurs to want to just go ham on that idea, and just go for it?
Yeah. Well, I think most importantly, obviously I agree with you. We have been talking about this for 3+ years, 4+ years. The real question becomes, people just are not aware that it's an opportunity. They don't even understand what I just described in terms of taking somebody from off the street to working as hard as possible. in a safe environment that's going to quantify everything. I mean, it doesn't exist in the world right now. And to quote Jim, our internal ARX Jim, he always likes to talk about how the idea of some guy just showed up one day and said, hey, we're going to do horseless carriages. And everyone around is sitting there like, what do you mean? Like, what's going to pull the carriage? And they're like, no, we're going to do this new thing. We're going to put motors on there and it's going to run itself. And you're not going to need a horse anymore. And everybody looks around and says, this is a joke. There's no way that you could possibly ever, what, you're going to build a system of roads that are going to go all around the world? Yeah, actually, that's exactly what we're going to do. It's going to take some time, but that's exactly what's going to happen. And then when Tesla comes around, they're like, cool, you have an electric car, but man, what are you going to do? You're going to build like charging stations across the country on like in the middle of the desert. And you're like, yeah, no, that's exactly what we're going to do. And then they did it. So these things are not things until they are. And it's hard for most people to see that vision in the future when we've been so indoctrinated into one format of how to do resistance training. What does the traditional exercise place looks like? Our customers, especially the ones who were early in the game, like Josh and Abe and Owen out there, like they have done an amazing job of setting up an environment that doesn't look traditional and then selling people on why that's valuable. That's now in 2020, people don't have an opportunity to do the traditional anymore, right? It's dying, and we knew it was going to die, but we just didn't think it was going to die this fast. And
well, let me interject briefly.
Please.
I think maybe we just need to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. So I think the traditional gym, sweat session, loads of people in there working out, unsupervised, that model's dying. But I think the HIIT studio still has a place.
Sure.
Maybe long term, I can see how, ARX and that kind of technology, and maybe if it's autonomous and it's as productive, that could potentially replace it. But is that what you're referring to? Or do you actually think that the HIIT studio business doesn't have the longevity?
I think it depends what you're optimizing for. Mm-hmm. So if you are trying to make the leanest form of a business that's the most profitable, employee overhead is your number one expense. Paying trainers, or you personally being the one that's there from a time perspective, you're just not optimizing. There's a better way. And if you can automate the things that you are doing and simplify them and then help more customers achieve a better workout, that's where we believe is the way that businesses should be going. But there's a disconnect with that. They're like, well, I'm the things I use to cue really get my customers to get the best out of their workout. That might be true, but have you compared that to the red line and the black line that I just talked about? Because I see people do things for numbers on ARX that my words can't get them to do. They don't want to push that hard. And if I tell them, hey, you can do it. You did 230 last time. When it gets hard, when they're in the middle of it all, they're not listening. They don't want to do that. Flip it around. And this is a very well-known situation in most people who have Fitbits or trackers. If I just tell you that you need to walk 10,000 steps a day and I give you some achievement or reward, there's people who wake up at 3:00 in the morning. They're like, I got to get my steps in. Now, I don't think that's actually the way to live a life or if it's even valuable. But the point is psychologically, people are willing to do things for quantified numbers that they are not willing to do from human motivation cues. And that's just the facts. When it's me versus me and I'm the one that makes the call, then I end up running that extra mile, pushing that extra amount, doing whatever I need to. I can't tell you how many people change their behaviors based off of steps or based off of aura sleep data, or some of these numbers that don't even really make sense sometimes, but they're like, they'll change their whole life to achieve this number. That's now possible with ARX. It's been possible, but it's going to take some time for the people who are not experienced and haven't used ARX for any significant period of time, you know, to realize that that's real and that you can do amazing things with people who otherwise would never work that hard, no matter how much you cue them and push them, and they'll just do it by themselves.
Yeah, I find this gamification piece quite fascinating, because one thing I've noticed is there are some clients who you can give them a target, let's say a target rep count, for example, in an exercise, and that actually helps them perform better. But then you have to be pretty savvy. You have to be quite experienced as a trainer. You have to know the client very well in order to guess what that rep's going to be. And then there's the issue of reps in reserve, right? People are really bad at predicting how many reps they could actually achieve. So maybe that's an issue. But then there's another mindset in high intensity training where there's less focus on the reps, which is the assumed objective versus the actual objective. I might be getting those words wrong, but it's like, no, don't even think about that. Just go to absolute muscle failure. Just continue to contract muscle. But it's like, there are some people who, well, quite a lot of people who just aren't able, well, maybe they are able to get there with great coaching, but they really struggle to, and they might do better with a actual target, like a quantified target, right? And it's interesting to hear you say how that's just worked really well with ARX, and maybe the ARX solution actually just works for everyone, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's really what we've seen. I mean, at first, when we were kind of launching this, I was trying to punch holes in this model and this machine, and I still try to do this on a day-to-day basis. I'm like, somebody please tell me what I'm missing and why this is a gimmick. Somebody please show me why this is not the thing that I have believed it to be. And I'm still waiting. I don't know, thousands of demo workouts. We have 10,000 people per month that are using our machine. We have all of these success stories. It makes me so happy and our company so happy to hear when our customers who started a year or 2 or 3 ago are being interviewed about their success on your podcast and other places. Like, it's real, guys. I don't know how else to say it. And if you need to be, and this is what it all goes back to, have you tried it? If you've tried it, you get it. And if you don't fully get what I'm talking about with the longer term, like, try it for a month and then tell me the difference. Because even the most staunch hit Jedi that are out there, right? The people who've been in it for 20, 30 years, they get it once they get to use the machine more than once, because they see all of the kind of the art that needs to be cultivated as a hit trainer. The stuff you were just talking about. I mean, that observational skill set that you start to come up with, and then in the moment you're like, oh, nope, didn't mean to say that, it's 420. Should have never mentioned how much weight was on there. Should have lied to you, honestly, and told you it was lighter so I can play this game in your head. That's the reason why those businesses are not optimized for scalable growth that is consistent and repetitive. You have to have this creativity at all times. You're still an issue in the process where, like, I can't replace with a new trainer that I pay half the amount because they don't have the art that I've cultivated.
I'd challenge that, Mike.
And I'm happy to hear that, but I've heard this from our customers. You can do it, but it takes time. And now you're sitting around training somebody to, like, look for all of these little nuances that otherwise you could just hire somebody who's just very congenial, happy, can give the explanation of why we're doing this training, and offload all of the difficult parts to the technology. Yeah. And that's the business that I'm confident will scale, because you never know when this trainer is going to leave. And I just had this conversation with Owen and Lucy in San Francisco. They spent a whole bunch of time training somebody, and then that person leaves. That's happened to them 2 or 3 times in the last year. Like, they want to run a more efficient business, but they keep having to insert themselves because they still have this magic sauce. in the business. And I think ARX takes care of a large portion of that, not all of it. So don't hit my inbox and yell at me that I'm like missing all the, like, I hear you guys, like there's still value to the human and the coach. I definitely believe that. But if you're trying to run the most optimized business and the most scalable one, you need to make the onboarding and the actual experience of the workout easier for everybody, trainer included.
Yeah, I agree with much of what you said, though. The only thing I was going to say is I think it's interesting, right? Because there are a lot of high intensity training business owners who have spent decades perfecting the art of their training and who don't believe that it's easy or it's not easy or it's possible to systematize that. And so they've made a conscious choice sometimes not to create a system so that they can hire someone to repeat the way they do it. And maybe there's something to be said. In fact, it's probably quite true that, look, if you're a master a hit trainer who's been doing it for 30 years, and I've been trained by some of these guys, and it's really noticeable. Like, it's incredible, right? On the the more traditional equipment. And maybe that's true, that's not going to transfer to someone for a system. They have to obviously obtain that level of experience. But then maybe they don't have to have that level of skill in order to actually scale the business and deliver great workouts. Discover Strength's a great example of that. Again, the trainers are obviously very high quality. They're good trainers, but a lot of them come into DS without the HIIT background, and they just have a really, really good system for teaching trainers. So they become skilled very, very quickly. And, I can say that because I've been trained by lots of DS trainers, and they're fantastic. But I do also agree with you that ARX takes that one step further, because then you don't need to necessarily have trainers spend so much time, and you don't have to invest maybe as much in them to get them skilled up. And maybe you don't even need them at all if you go down the autonomous route. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. I don't know where don't think we actually disagree with each other. But yeah, I just wanted to articulate that.
Yeah, I love to hear a counterpoint to this, because it ultimately ends up that if you're being honest about what's happening in your business, you realize that the human component of it is the most overhead from a time and money perspective. Like you get it. You're just like, yeah, it is. I've sat at REC and I listened to Luke talk about how he incentivizes his trainers to educate themselves further and deeper. And I watched them all work, and it's clear they're putting the time and effort into it. But Luke really invests in his trainers, and they invest in Discover Strength. That's not the case across the board, especially for some people who just want to get a business off the ground and get it rolling. They may not be that into the idea of being like, Luke is an expert teacher, right? That's in his DNA. If you are just a business person, or you're just looking for somebody who like wants to help as many people as possible, and you don't want to sit there and analyze research papers in like a group setting like they have to do, then that's a very different model that they've laid out. If your goal is to provide the safest, most effective, most efficient workout possible to the most amount of people, and you're optimizing for that, and you're not trying to insert yourself as like some, high up ivory tower knowledgeable trainer, then that's the way I'm going to go to business or go to market with my business. That's absolutely how I want to do that, because my goal, what I'm optimizing for, is I just want to help as many people as possible and make money and profit. And so removing the trainer solves a lot of problems. And internally, I get kind of, I get heated about trainers, because I've seen trainers bury businesses. Either like they go under because of them, or they are literally just buried and they can't ever grow because they tried to hire some expert trainer, or they tried to hire some people who had some quote unquote expertise, and the trainer inserts themselves as the special sauce. And they say, well, no, I know the special rep set combination. It's like, oh, the way I cue is the best way to cue. And sometimes it's not. And that's just hard to watch, because you have this anchor now that's holding your business in place. And it's hard. It's hard to train some of those people beyond that because there's an ego involved. It's a human. It has to be there. But if I just say, hey, get me this number on the screen, the trainer's out of it. The trainer doesn't have any opportunity to kind of screw it up. And I see it all too often, and I hear it directly from customers who have to fire those trainers at some point. And then they're back to square one, running their business or having to hire somebody. And then they just feel like, I don't know why I couldn't move forward and grow the business. I know why.
Yeah, this is interesting because before this call, I guess I thought, oh, Mike probably thinks that an autonomous ARX experience is just one option. And I know it kind of is, but I didn't realize how strongly you felt about just the lack of need for trainers. Now, I feel a bit guilty because I don't want everyone to just fire all their team all of a sudden.
I don't either.
But I do see your point. It's definitely something that I guess some can consider. But I didn't really realize that that's where your mind was at.
And it definitely is. But I also am aware that, initially right now, you're going to need somebody there to onboard a trainee to use ARX, to learn the workout, right? You got to have somebody confidently set up ranges of motion. Software, though, is moving. Like, I'm every day thinking, like, how are we going to make this system so good that you can walk up and that the actual, Peloton's doing this, all these connected fitnesses apps are all doing this. They're just using video, and in response they're saying, hey, welcome to, Peloton's training. Like, these are the things you need to check. And it shows you a picture, like, this is how you clip your shoes in. And today we're going to do this workout. And like, someone's guiding you through it, but they're not physically there. And they're sometimes not even live. So there's a way forward to get somebody like the setup and the basics of ARX. But right now, let's just, we're kind of in the early days of making this transition. I fully believe we're going to get there in a very short period of time. But let's just say you have somebody that launches you and gets you started and explains ARX to you for the first 4 sessions, right? By 4 sessions, I promise you, everybody will feel confident, especially if by the second or third session, they're the ones that are pushing the buttons on the screen. That's really all that people are kind of nervous about. But the way we design the software is it's like super easy. It's very linear. It is very repetitive. It is meant to be that way. It's not a whole bunch of different drop-down menus and hidden things. It's all there for you because we know that's where we want to go. By session 3 or 4, that person is running their own workout and you're just in the room supervising. Hey, I got a question, remind me again on the leg press, do I push through my toes or my heels? Make sure you're pushing through your heels. Like simple things like that. You don't need an expert trainer for. You just need somebody who is paid a decent wage, who's congenial and is like representative.
AI. Right.
Well, there's that too.
I just got finished reading *Sapiens*. You read that?
I haven't yet, but I was just listening to him being interviewed.
Yeah. So I can never remember his full name. Harari's his last name, I think.
Yeah.
And it just made me realize that so many of these roles are going to be automated by AI. I mean, it's difficult, right? Because I'm here, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, okay, someone's on there. Because I know I've challenged you a fair bit, but at the same time, I agree with you on a lot of this, and it makes me think like if someone's sitting there and they think, oh, I have a question about breathing or whether I should be putting force through my heels, they'll just be able to ask it, and there'll be some kind of like technology that just gives them the perfect answer, right? There'll be some kind of AI that does that. So that will be a thing, I'm sure, in the next 5 to 10 years.
And I think that number is too high. I think it's like 2 years away, and we're going to see this dramatic, like we're on a logarithmic curve when it comes to that technology. And for the first 10, 20 years of this curve, it's pretty lame. There's nothing really that cool. And then all of a sudden you start hitting those jumps year over year where you're like, what happened? 10 years ago, the iPhone came out. 10 years, guys. Like, there's 3 cameras in this thing. It's better than some of the handheld, like mirrorless cameras in terms of like resolution. Like, yeah, everyone just looks back and we're on this curve now. So it all seems, relatively normal, but flash back to what your phone looked like 5 years ago.
Oh yeah.
it's horrible, right? It's not even anywhere close to where we are. And if you understand that that's the curve that we're on, then you can essentially see the future. And that's where we're trying to really, like, we want to be on that curve and we want to push that curve a lot sooner. But I mean, whether we choose to or not, like, this is where the world's going. And this industry and this pandemic is just accelerating the process of, like, man, how do we make this more autonomous so we still can be in business? And most people, after they realize, like, I never really even really liked going to that gym, or like, I didn't really even like having a trainer around me. I just like working out by myself. And that's what the Pelotons of the world and the Tonals of the world, like, they're shifting the mindset from the home user perspective to say, like, oh, here's what's possible now, guys. You don't need a trainer. You have 50 trainers that are available at the push of a button. And you can fly to Brazil mentally and go ride your bike in the mountains. Like, guys, it's amazing. Like, this is unbelievable what's happening. To assume that ARX is not on the same curve, we may be a little further back, but that's only a matter of time until everything becomes so simple to use. But right now it's also very, very easy to use. And we've convinced multiple of our very staunch customers who, upon install 2 years ago, I was like, hey, this is probably the way you should be thinking about and running your business. They're like, no, we're going to have a one-on-one person, like, walk them through. I'm like, totally cool. If you like the idea of paying that person to do that process, then great. If that's fine and it works for your business. When everything kind of hit and they were forced to rethink, they're like, hey, how does it work if I want to have somebody run their own workout? I say, ooh, rub my hands together in satisfaction. Cause, like, I get them now motivated about that idea that we already knew was going to happen. And then they say, okay, so first session, I run them through, second session, they run themselves, third session, they run it autonomous. I'm like, yeah, try that. They come back with an email that says, like, we didn't think this was ever going to work. And it totally works. And sometimes people like it better. It's just the way the world's working. And yeah, if you want to be on that curve and you want to join that, then awesome. If you don't, that's also your prerogative. We're not saying you have to do anything. We're just laying out an opportunity for people from a business perspective that did not exist 2 years ago. Yeah. And now it does. And if you're interested in that model, then, give us a call. Like, we believe this is where we're headed.
I think it's a very attractive proposition. And I bet you, if you go back to the old podcasts, you probably mentioned it to me and I've just completely forgotten. I am interested in the social element, though. I'm really old fashioned, right? It's funny. We're on Zoom right now. I don't hate Zoom. I really struggle sometimes with, like, virtual meetups. And I actually do a virtual happy hour every month with everyone in Hit Business membership or people that can attend, where we just talk shop, kick back with a beer, just chat. It's just fun, right? And you just get to talk to like-minded people and see what's going on in each other's businesses. And no, it's a lot of fun. I like doing that. But I would still way prefer to do it in person, like, even during lockdowns, I really much prefer to meet someone in person, like do a business meeting in person as opposed to over Zoom. So I am pretty old fashioned, perhaps. But I'm just, I guess where I'm going with this is the social component. There's something, I don't know. I think a lot of people, you said about people don't want to necessarily, some people don't want a trainer. I think there's a lot of people that do want someone there.
Yes.
Maybe they don't need them. Maybe you're right. Like ARX, maybe the technology can really coach form. And like I said, there'll be AI available to address the FAQs, right? But, like, I'm a bit worried because I don't want, I don't know, like, fitness isn't a social event, but it is an opportunity for people to interact and connect with each other. And I guess that concerns me a little bit because I think actually following this year, I hope that actually there'll be more social connection than ever. I would hope. Not that has to happen with exercise, but it's just one way it can happen.
I disagree with none of what you said. People definitely need trainers. They do. They need the social component. That is a huge way that people find community in all cities around the world. Leading up to this, the boutique or the big group fitness stuff was exploding.
Yeah.
Even
funny,
bad
right?
exercise versions of it were exploding. And you're like, that doesn't even do anything for your body. But people are like, but I really like the teacher, and I meet a bunch of friends. It's like, that's cool.
It's the social, it's the community. Sorry, there's some research to show. I think it was some research done with senior people about exercise sustainability, outcomes, just adherence, and the social component was really important for them. So I wonder if we might lose that a little bit if we make it too mechanical, you know?
So let's talk about that, because I'm not an either or person. I'm an and guy. I want it all. I don't want to have to choose. And so what you're describing is like, oh, you have to either go fully autonomous or, you know, trainers at every station, at every machine ready to go to talk to you and guide you through. I think you can blend it. And my question to anybody who's worried about this would be, well, why don't you have a trainer during regular quote unquote business hours that new customers have to go through the education introduction process? But when you close your doors, you don't get to make any money. But if I have a customer that wants to come in at 10 o'clock at night, well, I'll just give them key card access and they work out by themselves. Like, they're opting for a solo workout. They understand what it is. And then if they want to come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and be trained by a trainer, then give them that opportunity too. Mm-hmm. But for us to be limited by the human, the trainer being this all knowing and all necessary person, what about after hours? Could you have a 24-hour business that is capable of serving your clientele? Or are you limiting yourself to the hours that a person has to be there to work? So I'm an and person. Do both. Have the traditional day-to-day, walking them through. How's it going, Lawrence? Like, tell me about your dog or like your new kid or whatever. Like, that's hugely valuable. And in fact, I bet you if you talk to most business owners, they're like, I honestly don't even think this person cares about exercise. I think they just want to come in and talk to me. True. Like, I've heard Owen talk about this a lot. And so he's like, you gotta stop them in their tracks before they start telling the vacation story, because they're your friend at some point. And there's huge value to that. That's what keeps people honestly in the business. But what if they also want to come at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, because they're a night shift worker or something like that? You know, like these are realities that people are dealing with, but we're not providing business solutions that service those people. We're just saying like, if you don't meet my schedule, then you don't get to train. Here's an opportunity to do both and do it safely and not worry and still collect, you know, membership money. That's what our customer in Denver, in Golden, technically, that's what he does. I go, how many people show up after the hours of 8 o'clock PM? He's like, 50% of them. I was like, that's amazing. He's like, and sometimes they can come on the weekend, you know, during regular hours, and they get to see me and stuff. But like most of the time they're showing up at like 11 o'clock because they're night owls, and that's when they get their workout in. We're really not servicing those people if we force them into a box that says you have to be here between the times of 6 and 5.
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking of really busy professionals or entrepreneurs who have kids. I can see why those hours would be appealing, right? Because they've come home, they're on baby duty, they then put their baby down for sleep, and then they're like, right, I've got like, you know, maybe an hour, maybe 2. Let's go and get my 10-minute ARX full body workout in.
Yeah, it's a salvation. The gym has always been this salvation for many people. I was one of those people. And it was like, oh, I get a chance to just like put my headphones on and like listen to awesome music or a podcast or something like that. And I'm like, I'm stacking, I'm doing 2 things that are valuable at once. And I hear this often. They're like, oh, well, I still like going to the gym. I'm like, I get it. I'm not telling you not to. Nobody on our team will ever say not to, because you're probably going to the gym though, not because you believe the dumbbell is superior, but because you like the social aspect of it, or you like to be just separated from your house and your office, and it's like the other place that you can go. It's a salvation for those people. And that's awesome. Do that. That's valuable. But create a business that does both, that also can service them as a trainer during the day, but also give them that salvation in the evening. Now you serve everybody.
And it will resonate with different types of people, like you say, right? So it'll be like, does the 16-year-old kid who just wants to like gain muscle mass and go to a gym with his buddies, he might not be an ideal target market for an ARX business, right? Whereas the Silicon Valley coder who's working crazy hours and only has a window of time, like, I don't know, late at night or early morning to get his workout in, and he's not interested in a gym because it's too intimidating to him or her, and wants to just get a very effective 10-minute workout in, is perfect. So I think it's a great idea, and I think it's not going to resonate with every individual, and that's okay.
That's totally fine. Get all of them. Don't segment yourself to only the people that want a trainer, or only the people that want an autonomous experience, right? Like, you can have a blended model. That's why we want to talk to all of our prospects, because right now everyone seems to just immediately, I don't know if this is just how society is working these days. It's like everyone wants to go to the immediate ends of the spectrum. It's like, has the answer ever been there, guys? Has it ever been at the far right or far left of anything? It's typically somewhere in the middle. Like, that's a legit question that I ask all the time. Like, find me a time where it's ever been all or nothing, or like one side or the other. It's always in the middle. And so we know that. Be flexible. Provide a service that helps the most amount of people. And that is not limited by you or your knowledge or your time that you can allot to the business. It's the technology exists across the board. There's keyless entry doors. There's all sorts of Wi-Fi security camera systems. There's insurance policies that work for this. Like, you name it, it's there now. These things are all mature. And so because of that, use them to your advantage to create something that's new.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just, I think we're coming to the end of the hour, Mike, and I just wanted to wrap it up by saying, well, obviously I'll ask you for where we can send people. But I know there's some people listening to this who are very impressionable, much like myself, and maybe they've got a gym and trainers and they get very concerned. And I just want to say that if you're one of those individuals, and I know because I speak to them a lot, use your own critical thinking skills to think about what we've said. You know, I've posted some views, Mike's posted his view. We've certainly probably got some different views on things. Maybe we've got different biases. And I want you to be able to listen to this and then come back into your own studio and look at your own strategy and decide what's best for you, what's your truth, and use your own critical thinking skills. Just because I know that this stuff can really mess with people who don't do that and instead are kind of looking for someone else to tell them what to do. Do you know what I mean, Mike? It's like, it's just, a lot of individuals think are like that. I myself can be like that sometimes. And it's really having the self-confidence to really think about what's best for you in your situation. You know? And
the critical thinking side across the board, not just for what we're talking about, is something that has just been very apparent in the world today.
You can blame social media for that, right?
Most people don't want to expend that amount of energy to consider some difficult things sometimes, some ones that are contrary to what their current beliefs are. I absolutely I applaud all of that and want that. If you are in the middle of considering how to move forward as a business owner in an existing business, or that you believe that this model is the future like we do, but you're not sure about how to move forward, or you have other questions that we didn't address today, I mean, that's why getting on a phone call and talking to us is the thing. Like, it's always been the thing with us, that if we can get somebody to have a longer form conversation, we can appropriately like set the frame and understand the context that they're working within, to say like, oh, okay, so like you're on this side over here, like we need to bring you a little more into the middle. Have you considered these ideas? There's a lot of different ways to go to market with Arx Machines. We've seen them all. It's been really cool to be on the sidelines watching our customers be the pioneers in this world. Could you give us a couple of examples of the different ways they've gone to market with it? Sure. So you got your let's just start from the biggest thing possible, right? So you have like your Upgrade Labs, they open facility, high rent district in Santa Monica, all the latest and greatest tech. It's very expensive, huge overhead in terms of employee overhead. They had a very one-on-one experience, but they charged an ultra premium. Okay, so they were able to get away with it.
Is that Dave's company? Is that owned by Dave? Dave Asprey?
Yeah, technically, Dave Asprey started that.
Okay.
And then he has a business partner with it as well. But, they're kind of shifting. They have to shift their model now, though, because California has been rough and it's going to continue to be rough. And so you look at that model that is just a lot of overhead. You take a step down from that, and now we go to like a place like Quantify Fitness or Julian Orem Fitness in Zurich, right? They have a couple pieces of technology in them that are all very beneficial to one another. And okay, so now we're at a smaller footprint. Now we're only at like 1,500 square feet maybe. And you're providing huge value. It's a very clear offering, business proposition, value proposition. And we're able to churn people through at a high rate, at a still a premium price, but not like an ultra premium price. And because of that, they're able to expand. So Julian's on his third location already, looking at 4, because they have such a good model that works. And Josh would do that at Quantify, except he was able to keep his corporate executive job, even when he thought he was going to get fired 3 years ago for having another business. He can do both of them. And so he has this amazing lifestyle business that's honestly a push button away from growing if he wanted to. And so he'll be the first one to tell you that. I'm not saying anything that he wouldn't also say. But that's the next model. Then you go to like the ultra simplified, like broken down, very, very small square footage. Now we're talking like 1,000, maybe 750 square feet, 2 Arx machines in a room, and we're just churning through workouts. We're just putting people through once or twice a week, and it's very, very just cookie cutter. And that also is very profitable because you don't have this overhead. And you go one step further from that now would be what we're trying to usher into more people's minds is the idea that like you might not even be there at all. So I've talked to Owen about this specifically. What would it look like if you had a remote express version of Live Oak Strength? All right, you still do everything you're doing in your main location, but I don't know if you've ever been to the Bay Area, but traffic sucks. No. And getting around the area is difficult. And he has people that drive 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, to do a workout. Well, if you open an express location that is 1 Arx machine, 2 Arx machines maybe, in a small room with little key card access, there's no trainer at all, but they've been onboarded at your home HQ location. I mean, fantastic. Now I'm providing more service to my customer, more value to my customer. And they still might want to come to the mothership every once in a while, but they may not always be ready to drive an hour each way, real story, in San Francisco to do a workout. So it's like, I don't want to invest 2.5 hours to do this. I'd rather just go down the street, pop the key card. I know how to use these machines. I get my workout and it's 20 minutes and I'm out. Like that's what's now possible. So it doesn't have to be either or, it could be and.
Yeah, no, really appreciate that rundown. Mike, what is the best way for people to find out more about Arx?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website, number one spot, go to the products page, look at what we currently offer. Our pricing is now in the Buy Arx section, a little button in the top right. And everything's laid out. It's a lot easier, cleaner to understand what the actual business proposition is that we're trying to provide. And get on the phone with us. Like, fill out the form. Let's talk. There are so many opportunities to succeed and strike while it's hot now. It's only a matter of time until this all happens. And we knew that a couple of years ago. 2020 just accelerated everything to where now people are forced to think differently. They don't have the luxury of considering doing the old model because some people are saying the old model, you're not allowed to do that anymore. So we can talk about personal freedom and sovereignty and all that stuff on another podcast, but that's the life we're in right now. So adjust accordingly and know that the technologies are now mature enough in order to make that business of your dreams happen. It just might not look exactly the way that you thought it had to look. actually it might look better, might look easier.
Yeah. And if they mention they heard about ARX on High Intensity Business, they'll get a $500 off. Is that still a thing?
Correct. Still a thing.
Yeah.
Still doing that. Please support
probably
the
have checked
podcast.
that with you before the episode, but
yeah, no, it's official now for sure. If it wasn't, no, and please do put that in there into the how did you hear about ARX? Lawrence, you've done such an amazing job with our industry, and it's just been so fun to watch your personal growth as a business, from corporate warrior to high intensity, and to really build this relationship. I mean, we're all in this together. Like, we're all trying to help, like, at the highest level possible. And I'm really glad that I had an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we've been doing that is, it's shifting the industry big. And we want to support everybody in business and who wants to create a business the same. We're not trying to like push anybody out or like shut anybody down. We think this is an and situation. We can all win.
Yeah, and you've certainly got my gears turning. I'm thinking about the long term of our company, our personal training company here in Ireland, and what future locations might look like. And I know that my business partner is going to listen to this, and he's going to be at me on this. He's going to be, he is definitely, I know what he's like. He's good. He's going to listen to it and it's going to, trigger a vast, host of ideas that he's going to have for the future. So that'll be fun to have those conversations. And Mike, no, it's a pleasure. And I love, like, as you say, I love building this relationship up and working with you guys. And I'm excited about what the future holds. And it's been great to have you back on the podcast again.
Great to be here. I'll come back whenever, and please reach out to us, everybody who's listening. We'll walk you through. We'll figure out what model works best for you. We've seen it all, and it's been so fun to be a part of that. And we're just getting started. Like, if you think what we have right now is cool, like, give us time. Like, we got great ideas, and they're driven by our customers who are out there telling us, hey, it'd be cool if, and then we do that. That's the fun part of being in a like abundant mindset, that all we care about is growing and helping as many people as possible. And our customers are the ones on the front lines that are giving us that feedback. We take it back to our engineers and our team, and 6 months later, there it is. So we want to do big things, and we want everybody else who's listening right now to join us.
Good stuff. And to find the full show notes for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search for episode 298. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening.